do some work in my mom's house, fix it out, call some people, answer Claudio's email. But eventually you go back 2 days after, you pick up the guitar again, right? But just the fact that you pick the guitar, that you have an instrument or a piano, whatever, still you can do terrible music or great music like you have. So where the inspiration come from? It's like I suppose it like a writer, right? If they're forced by the publisher, okay, you need to send me a manuscript by next week.
Yeah.
I don't care how you do it. Right. Okay, there you go. In your case, right, since you are kind of, you don't go on the road, you're kind of independent, you want to do good work, you have done good work. How the new theme, come about and the inspiration come from?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with you about deadlines. If people want things, it really does help to concentrate the mind. And although you're very kind, but I mean, there have been times when I have been a bit drifting, and if there hasn't been a deadline, I have maybe been a bit indecisive and taken longer than I should. But I think probably the correct answer would be that, I just love the sound of stringed instruments, and I love the sound of the piano, and I love all the exploration of the synth world. So if I give myself a project to do one of these, I don't find it difficult to get ideas, and often I've got a stockpile of ideas. Like I'm always writing little bits. Even if I sit down and practice, I get very bored with practicing, and I immediately come up with some little idea. So I put it down, record it, and I keep masses of these snippets. And so when it comes to doing an album, I'm often drawing on lots of material. Maybe it's like a bit like an artist with a sketchbook. They've got an old, there's a sunset, another sunset and a rainbow. And then they come up to do some work and think, right, I've got that sketch. I'll do that one. I'll do that one. But I think ultimately, say with Field Day, what I did with Field Day? I hadn't done any guitar writing for a long time. And because I've been doing all this keyboard work for library, what I did was I sat down. Each day I'd take one instrument, and I had a lot of different ones, and I would just give myself 2-3 hours just to improvise on each instrument, some of them in different tunings, and different tunings helps for me for inspiration, because you go off down a different path. So I would improvise for 2, 3, 4 hours, and then not thinking about what I was doing. Sometimes if your brain gets in the way, if your intellect gets in the way, it's a bad thing. So just improvise, let the first thing that comes out, instant reaction to your first intuitive reaction to the instrument as you pick it up, and it's fresh because you haven't picked it up for ages. I'm sure someone like John Lennon, for instance, didn't sit and practice the guitar every day. He would pick up an instrument because the guy was so bloody brilliant. As soon as he picked up an instrument, a great idea came to him because it was fresh. I'm a lesser mortal, but a slightly similar thing applies. That on Field Day, I'd pick up an instrument, say my 8-string English bouzouki, and because it's a beautiful sound and different, I'd get some ideas. I think a lot of the ideas were rubbish, but I'd go back and then listen to all the ideas, and I'd what we call cherry pick the best ideas and then turn them into pieces. And that would work with synths as well.
Yeah, and then all these pieces, you have like a studio at home that you can record a little bit. You're cooking, you're cleaning, and then you heard something on TV or the radio, whatever you listen to at home, and you write it down and you record it. And
and I have studio at home, absolutely, very much so. Yeah. I mean, Field Day was. The problem with Field Day was that I wrote so many pieces that the practice schedule became very hard. There were about 60, and I had to keep stopping Field Day and do other things and then coming back to it. So that was a bit of a magnum opus, that one. Yeah, a bit of a magnum. But thank you. I'm so glad you like that. Thank you.
And private pieces and can go on and on. And Christian too. I mean, you are very humble, Anthony, and you are I know you are very famous, and Genesis, you were part of probably the top, in my opinion, the top 3 groups in the history of music, and with Pink Floyd and with Led Zeppelin, right? Yeah, the Beatles and the Beatles, Elvis Presley, that were in the 60s, but from the 70s and on, those according to me, according to Claudio, those are the Genesis with Peter Gabriel, and then Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd are the best by far
Really,
groups in the history of music, awarded to my taste. But so you were part of the best of the best, you know.
Well, that's very kind of you. What can I say? You're embarrassing me now.
No. You're very humble.
I don't feel very famous over here. Certainly, I mean, I'm known to some, but most people over here don't know me at all.
Well, because you don't tour, but still you're producing a lot of very good quality. I mean, not everybody, like famous writers in the United States or people that write poetry, they don't go outside. They don't you won't not see in the supermarket, but they are publishing and writing the best, you know, work out there in the world. So,
oh, thank you. I seem to be respected by people with taste, which is good anyway.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Okay, Christian, go ahead.
Well, and I must say that I used to work on a radio station called Futuro, back in since the late 80s until the mid 90s, and there I had the liberty, the freedom to play whatever I wanted, and all these bands that Claudio has just mentioned were part of the playlist every day. So it was not a pop station. So I'm glad that I could airplay lots of your music, lots of that.
Well,
now, now maybe I don't know if this is a nice question to you, but for the way that Genesis evolved, did you ever picture yourself back in the band? You said a few moments ago that Genesis is not the type of band you go back to, but is there any of the stages they went through that you said, oh, these guys are doing the right thing? For example, I'm a big fan of Mr. Steve Hackett. You know his work, and I know Claudio is also a big fan of Mr. Steve Hackett, whom we spoke to 2 weeks ago, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah, he's been to Chile like 3 times. It's been really amazing. He's made incredible shows here, and he's a really humble man and very kind and very friendly and very talented for me. So, do you think you identify with some of the albums he was involved in, for example, or any of the albums that Genesis made after you left?
Yes, I mean, I have to say straight off that Steve, in the last 10 years, I didn't know him well early on, but Steve has become a very good friend. So I get together with Steve quite a lot now. There's a group of us, 4 or 5 of us, that get together for supper. And we compare stories about our experience in Genesis. And it's quite interesting, actually. You know, we're very good friends. And I got an enormous amount of respect and affection for him. I think the albums, personally, that Genesis did, I mean, it's difficult to, probably it's not right for me to start saying, you know, which ones are good and which ones I don't think are so good. But certainly, I think that the group of albums after I left were progressively very, very good indeed. I mean, really, I mean, I think that Selling England by the Pound, I would probably put right up there with, yeah, I mean, I think there were times when I never regretted not being on the road, and I never regretted not having the arguments in the group, but I certainly probably regretted not being part of some of those pieces of music, because there were some really magnificent pieces of music that they did back then. I mean, I like a lot of the later stuff. You know, it's clever in its own way, but there's a kind of majesty and grandeur, and I think originality as well about the music between 71 and 75, which I know has an enormous amount of fans still.
Yeah. Wow. Anthony, I don't know, you know, I know it's almost 10 o'clock down there at home at your house. I don't know, you know, how long do we have? We have time for?
I'm okay. I'm fine,
yeah. Yeah. Great, thank you. Yeah, Christian mentioned that also. Yeah, we had Steve here a couple of weeks ago. He was like you, very decent, very good person. You know, British people maybe are different than Americans, but you know. So, are you still in touch with or you get along with Phil or Peter Gabriel or Tony Banks? I know you mentioned Mike Rutherford. You have done a lot of work in the past. You guys try still to see
Yeah,
one another once a year or twice a year? Or?
there aren't any regular get-togethers. I mean, when there was the anthology done, we got together. Mike Rutherford was on a TV program called This Is Your Life, and I saw some of the others then. But I mean, Phil is obviously not a terribly well man, which is obviously very, very sad saying that. I mean, he's been in Switzerland and America, so I mean, I ironically did get to know Phil pretty well actually in the early 70s after I left the group before he joined. In fact, he didn't drive in those days, so I used to go and pick him up, drive him, and you know, back to my studio, and we'd do stuff, and he'd tell me things about what was going on in the group that, you know, were really interesting, you know, and I wasn't going to obviously tell anybody like that. So yeah, you know, nothing scandalous or anything, but, you know, obviously it was interesting because but Peter lives in a different part of England to me. I don't really see him, you know. He's a lovely man. Mike, I'm godfather to his daughter, but again, I don't see too much of him. Tony Banks and I share a mutual friend called David Thomas, who had the flat in London where he let us all stay there. Memorably, when we were doing From Genesis to Revelation, it was a 2-bedroom flat, and 17 people stayed, including the drummer sleeping in the bath. That's a true story. That is a true story, yeah. But yeah, a lot of people in the same bed anyway. But yeah, no, to Tony and I do see Tony. I saw Tony at another friend's 70th. So yeah, no, he's always very friendly. And we get on fine. But Steve is the one I see most. And Steve is, you know, because Steve and I are in London. I mean, I'm not at the moment, but normally I'm in London, whereas the others aren't. And so I've become very close to Steve. I mean, to be honest, I mean, some musicians are pretty full of themselves and pretty arrogant. I think Steve is a real exception. Steve's very humble, very, very humble indeed.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine, right. We would love to, like we were talking with Christian this morning, that we, you know, if possible, we would love to invite the other, you know, former members of current member of Genesis, like, but getting a hold of Peter Gabriel or Phil Collins is impossible for us. It's I
think it's a bit like trying to get a hold of God in some respects, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So we are very lucky that, you know, we were talking to you and then Steve will be, and you know, Tony Banks will be great, you know, to bring in, because I know he has done a lot of work as well lately, and will be great. But
so it's difficult. I mean, it's hard for me to really speak for them. I mean, I don't think their attitude is that they're too big for it. I just think it's the demands on their time, and obviously, if you get older, you know, they want to apportion their time quite carefully. Yeah. So they'll probably be told, no, you should only do the big interviews with, no disrespect to your station, but you should only do the really big. I mean, I'm putting words into their mouth, but they wouldn't. Certainly, there was no way any of those guys would think, oh, I don't want to do that because they're not big enough. It's just a question of time and how many demands are being made on them. That's, you know.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, you know, a little anecdote. I once met Peter here in 1991, I guess it was, when the Amnesty International team came down to Chile, and he was willing to give me an interview, and I was caught with only one of two credentials I needed, so I was literally kicked out of the National Stadium by one of the persons who was working for Amnesty International. I was really amazed the way they treated me. So I missed the interview with Peter Gabriel. That's a little anecdote.
Sorry about that.
He was very kind. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Ant.
Really nice guy, Peter. I mean, Pete's a real, as we say in England, he's a real gent. He's a gentleman. Yeah.
Well, most of the people we've been talking to with Claudio are like that. I mean, Steve, not to mention, he's really amazing. He could be anybody. Like if you didn't know his face, he's such a talented person and so creative. So he's really amazing. Yeah.
He's very modest. He's very prolific as well. My God, he doesn't stop. He and Roger King. I mean, they keep all through lockdown. He's been producing music more than me. Yeah.
Well, I suppose that making music for them and you is like breathing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the air you need. I was going to ask you, what is it like to write for Images? I'm also a big fan of film music. a collector of film music, and so is Claudio. And what's the difference? Obviously, maybe a silly question of writing your own pieces than when you do make these collections, because you are not watching what they're going to be used in, or maybe you just have an idea.
It's an interesting question. I mean, I did a lot of the main thing I did was a lot of wildlife programs, and ironically, given the part of the world you're in, I worked for a wildlife director that lived for many years in the Amazonas region of the the rainforest, and he would bring in these incredible programs with these. It looked like something from the moon, because we're just not used to the fauna and the flora and these strange animals, and so. You've got stuff in front of you which you can't approach I'll just do a nice 12-string sequence to that. I mean, you've got a choice of using indigenous instruments if you can get hold of them, but I would nearly always try a mixture. So I wrote a lot of them with my friend Joji Hirota, and I would do all the synth textural stuff and try and complement the pictures with a tasteful synth, not sounding too electronic. Kind of mystical, because a lot of the programs had almost a mystical edge in the rainforest and some of the tribes and all that kind of thing, and the way they deify the jaguar, some of the people, and these rites of some of the natives, and my friend Joji would play percussion, indigenous percussion, and things like ocarina, very haunting, and so we would sort of put it together a bit like a patchwork of set the mood and then add the sort of bits around it and the haunting melody on top. But yeah, I mean, you do have to approach it in a completely different way, but hopefully you're still drawing on the things that you love, aspects of the things that you love doing, but you're just pulling the right aspect into it's like cooking, I suppose. Really, you're saying for this particular thing we need that ingredient, and that ingredient.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you how the record deal with Passport Records happened in the US, because I think that even Larry Fast or Synergy was on Passport, Shadowfax, that type of bands like fusion jazz. And in England, I think you were working with Virgin originally. I don't know. I don't know. No,
absolutely no. No. What happened was absolutely not. No, it was
sorry,
extraordinary accident. I mean, it was almost it was really bizarre. Over a year had gone by, and the Geese of the Ghost had still not got released. And to be honest, it was finished in September 1975, and we're now talking November 76, nearly 15 months on. Nothing has happened with it, and I've got used to the idea that maybe this album's never going to come out. I mean, if I tell you it was a huge disappointment, it's a big understatement. So 1976 was not one of the best years. However, like a lot of musicians, I threw myself into loads more writing and recording. Simple. It had to be simple because I didn't have the equipment. But I ended up by writing and recording a lot of stuff that ended up on Private Parts and Pieces 1 and 2. So as we say in England, the gods move in mysterious ways. If it was going to come out straight away, I would never have done a lot of the stuff on Private Parts and Pieces 1, which is a favorite of a number of people. In fact, when amazingly enough, just on a slightly aside thing, when my albums were eventually released on Virgin, I remember the review in Q magazine. It reviewed as a group of three. It reviewed Geese of the Ghost, Sides, and Private Parts and Pieces 1. It gave 2 stars to Sides, 3 to the Geese of the Ghost, and 4 to Private Parts and Pieces 1. And I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. Geese of the Ghost, all that time spent on it. Private Parts and Pieces 1, most of that stuff only happened because the Geese of the Ghost didn't come out. It's just simple guitar pieces. How bizarre. But yeah, so Passport suddenly came out of the blue long after I'd given up in late 76. Marty Scott, Tony Smith, my manager, had come across Marty Scott. Marty Scott suddenly said, yeah, we'd like to put this out. So it was a bit like a dream, to be honest, because I kind of given up, after nearly 15 months, this album's never going to come out. Life didn't seem to make a lot of sense, really. I wasn't angry or bitter. I think I was just a bit sad and confused, to be honest. So I was obviously delighted. And then I did a number of albums with Passport all the way through the 80s, all the Private Parts and Pieces albums when, money was tight and punk was the aftermath of punk. And then I was just getting ready to do my album Slow Dance at the end of the 80s, and they went bust. And that was when I hit the problems with the releases. So yeah, it was very much Passport first. Then the Virgin deal came through being signed as a composer. I was actually signed to Virgin Publishing as a TV and film composer, and I got the record deal to release all the. They were the first CD re-releases of the records, in 1990 and 91. And I worked with a very lovely guy called Declan Coghlan. I don't know if you ever came across him, but he ran the sort of Virgin alternative label at the time that had a number of sort of what you would call slightly, the more experimental artists. Unfortunately, when Virgin got taken over by EMI, though, a lot of artists, that label was given the push.
I see.
You have had the opportunity to play with a lot of great musicians in the past. If God were to give you the opportunity to play with anybody out there that you have not played, to do a solo album or a studio or is anyone in particular that you, looking back at your life, can think of and say, man, I never have the opportunity to play with whatever, Steven Wilson or Johnny or whatever.
You mean
it's a great guy. Is there anyone in particular that you wish to have the opportunity to do an album in the future?
You mean as a player and a composer, or just as a
both? Both. It can be both. It can be as a composer or a player. Somebody that you admire that you say, man, this guy is very good. I never had the opportunity to play, whether it's in England or somewhere else or in America.
Gosh, I'm not sure I know where to start, actually. I mean, there's so many. It's just heavens, blimey. You could sort of handpick people from a lot of the big prog bands to start with, across King Crimson, yes. And there would be artists as well, from maybe not mainstream pop, but the idea is doing something with somebody like Kate Bush or Stevie Winwood, or a lot of one's heroes when I was growing up. Heavens, gosh. And maybe co-composing with some of the great film composers as well would be something, wouldn't it? I'd love to sit and have a jam with I still can't pronounce his name, Gustavo, anyway. Yeah. The film composers are probably, as writers, the ones I look up to most, because I can't believe how beautiful the music they write is. There's just so many great guys. But it's one of those questions that you find that when you get asked, your mind sort of goes blank for a second. Probably after this interview, I'll think of about 3,000 and let you know.
We will do a part 2. We'll call you in a couple of weeks. And
Private Talks and Pieces. Why not?
Somebody asked me favorite band, really, all-time band of players. Who would you have? And which is a tricky one, actually, I must admit. I think I ended up with Eric Clapton on guitar. No, this is not as composers, this is players. Eric Clapton on guitar. I can't remember which drummer I plumped for. There's so many good drummers. Phil early on was such a great drummer. There's so many good drummers. I love Steve Gadsfield. I absolutely adore Steve Gadsfield as well. Not prog, but Lyle Mays, keyboard player. I mean, he's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Because I'm quite a fan of help. My brain's gone. I can't remember his name. This is what.
Pat Metheny group.
Yeah, thank you, Pat Metheny. Thank God. Yeah, I saw Pat Metheny so many times, but I haven't seen him for years. Some of the very jazzy stuff passes me by, but some of the stuff that's less extreme jazz, phenomenal group. He always had just great players, just an array of great players. But Lyle Mays was just something else, actually, completely something else. And I took my nephew, who's an aspiring drummer, to see Steve Gadd at Ronnie Scott's, which is a very trendy London club. And I can't remember the name of his bassist, Jimmy. Oh yeah, I can't remember. He looked like a classic 70s look, like he could have been from the Everglades, with the sort of the beard and a real relaxed guy. What a bass player! I mean, what a bass player! Absolutely stunning. I'll look up his name and let you know. But that was the group I plumped for. Oh, and Stevie Winwood. That was right. I'd have Stevie doubling vocals and also guitar as well. I mean, this is just random. You could put anybody in there as well, but yeah.
Go ahead, Christian.
Okay. I'm just curious about. I mean, you seem to be a big. I mean, not a music fan, but you do admire some people, and I also do admire some very unknown artists from the Charisma days. You were part of the Charisma story with Genesis, but I found out a guy who seems to have been brilliant as well. He unluckily left us many years ago. He was Clifford T. Ward, who is a brilliant song composer. He made several records on the Charisma label, so that's why I became interested in his music. Clifford T. Ward. I don't know if you ever heard.
I know the name, but remember, I left the group very early on in the relationship with Charisma, so I didn't really know the music. I mean, I knew Lindisfarne's music a little, Van der Graaf's music a little, but I remember the name Clifford T. Ward. What happened? Did he died young?
Yeah, he had a terrible illness. I don't know the name in English, but I think he ended up crawling in his recording studio because he couldn't stand up. And he made the interesting thing is that he made so many records, and so very few people remember him now. And he was really brilliant. I think even Paul McCartney has praised his work.
Really?
At times. Yeah. And then if we can move on to the next topic and final topic for me, I guess. And I've been a fan of fantasy and horror movies for some time. Well, I used to be, and I'm a big movie fan. I don't know if there's some genre or style of film that you would like to compose for, or specific movies or specific directors, if you say that you like or are into film music.
Gosh, well, I'll have to be honest with you that horror films aren't my favorite. I'm a bit freaked out by horror films. I think if they're a bit silly, I'm all right with it. But yeah, even Jaws. I mean, even Jaws is too much for me. Great music, but yeah. Well, I mean, someone like, funny enough, just thinking about John Williams. I mean, wow, the chance to have got somebody to do the score to Close Encounters or Schindler's List. I mean, wow. I mean, I don't think there's one genre of film. It's a question of what the film is. Maybe not extreme horror, or maybe not. I mean, I'm not very good with comedy, but romance. Yeah, those last two films as well. I mean, just anything beautiful, dramatic, romantic. So when are you going to commission me?
Oh, let me think. We will let you know. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to ask you for the possibility of an ID. I don't know if you can make an ID for the station.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Huh? Well, the name of the station is AAM Radio.
AAM Radio.
Yeah, and it has a sort of slogan. It's AAM Radio. It's all about music. So you can invite the audience to listen to the music anytime. No special day.
What does AAM stand for?
All about music.
Oh, I see. Sorry, all about.
Yeah. 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 It's simple, but it's true. It's essentially music all day long. Not too much talking, not at all.
AAM radio. It's all about music.
That's it.
So, do you want me to say you are listening to?
Yeah, you could make one of those, but my idea is that you can invite the people to listen to a show, to a special show. We don't know when it's going to be on the air, but anytime. So this is Anthony Phillips, and I invite you to listen to my music on AAM radio, whatever.
You want me to get them to listen to my music? All right. Okay.
That's right. This all the stuff that is coming up that we want to be playing. So all the private pieces that we already play, and
Yeah.
this stuff and that and that and that. So you're very well. You and all Genesis members are very, very, very famous in Latin America in general. So.
Let me just think about this, guys. Let's think about how I'm going to say it. Okay, guys. Right, well, let's try a few. Can we try a few different ones?
Yeah.
Sure. So can I make a suggestion before you go?
Yeah.
And can you make one specially for the geese? Chan chan.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello there. It's Anthony Phillips here. These very kind gentlemen at AAM. No, let's try again. AAM radio. AAM radio. Yeah.
That's right.
You want me to say it's all about music as well?
It's not necessary. If it makes, yeah, no.
Whatever is easier for you. It's easier for people to say all about music. That yeah.
Hi there, it's Anthony Phillips here. The very kind gentleman at AAM Radio would like you to invite. No, I can't.
It's the other way around.
I used to be able to do this. I'm out of practice. Right. Take 24.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi there, this is Anthony Phillips, and I'm inviting you to listen to AAM Radio, where you are going to be able to listen to my music, The Geese and the Ghost.
Perfect.
Right, let's try another one.
Yep.
Sure.
Hello there, everybody. Hola. This is AAM Radio, and my name is Antonio Filippo, and I am insisting that you listen to my music later. It is very, very good.
Excellent too. All right. Very good.
Right, I'll do one more, even sillier. Right, okay. Right, good evening, everybody. I'm advertising a new radio station called AAM Radio. Apparently it stands for Aardvark Astronaut Music. It's very, very spacey, and it's very, very cool. And they're going to be playing some of my music, and my name is Anthony Phillips. So don't you miss out.
All right.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Total rubbish.
No.
Would you like a really straight one?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We'll do a really straight one. Hi there, it's Anthony Phillips, welcoming you to AAM Radio, where you're going to be able to listen to my music soon. It's all about music.
Good. Thank you very much.
Do I get the job, guys? Do I get the job?
Sorry?
Yeah, okay. We're going to tell you. Don't call us. We'll call you.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can meet one day. We would love for you to sign some of the CDs and some of the boxes. And
well, when we get through this pandemic, do you ever come to London?
Yeah. Actually, I am going to the Royal Albert Hall in mid-May. Eric Clapton is going to be doing 3 gigs there. The May 15, 17.
one of my godsons has just asked me, and I said, Chris, don't you think that might be a bit early? But he's got tickets. Yeah.
Yeah, the ticket they were released yesterday, and they went like that for the
really?
3. He's doing a Friday, May 15th. I need to look at a Friday, a Sunday, and a Tuesday at the Royal Albert Hall. So I will flew for that week and see other gigs. So I never seen I never seen Eric Clapton, and he's kind of semi-retired. He only came to United States for only 2-3 gigs, and he's not playing that much anymore. So
I could tell you so many stories. I mean, you know where you would know this, but I was in a group of people. Mike was one of them. Where I was only 13 or 14, where our parents didn't realize what we were doing. My parents thought I was staying with somebody else's parents, but I wasn't. We were staying in a flat in London. And we went to see, in quite a dodgy part of London, we were in Brixton. We went to the Ram Jam Club in Brixton in 1966, when Eric Clapton left the Yardbirds and joined John Mayall's Blues Breakers. And it was just amazing. Because, I mean, you had, on the one hand, you had these groups doing all these incredible songs with complicated arrangements, increasingly like the Beatles and all the rest of it. But then you had the blues scene going on. So you had Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Peter Green, and then Jimi Hendrix, and seeing some of these people was just like, unfortunately, I was at boarding school, so I missed it a lot of the time, but in the holidays. And you know the Marquee Club in London?
No.
Yeah, well,
but never been there.
That's where so many groups started out. I mean, I've seen Rod Stewart there when he was starting out. I've seen a guy that there was this band. We were sitting there, and this bloke gets up on stage in a long coat. He looks like a tramp. Do you know what a tramp is? Like a guy that lives on the street, you know, down and out. And he gets up on the stage and starts whirling around and playing the flute. We thought, who the hell is this geezer? Of course, that was
Ian Anderson.
Ian Anderson, absolutely. That was Jethro Tull.
Yeah.
So these guys were starting out here. You used to see the most amazing things. And the great thing was seeing them before there was all the big stadiums and all the trappings of success. They were tangible right there in front of you. So it was a great time. Great time.
Yeah, I never seen Eric Clapton at all. And that's one of my heroes. So I want to make the sacrifice and see him now with the pandemic, without the pandemic, now or never. Because
you must, because I think that, you know, it's well chronicled during his cocaine and of the bad out phase. He went right downhill, but from the late 80s, early on, his playing just has been brilliant again.
Right. So maybe I will give you a call when I'm in London, and we can have dinner or get a beer.
Well, let's hope. Well, no, definitely that. You must. Yeah, absolutely. You've got all my details. But let's just pray that we're out of the woods by May. I don't think.
Yeah, we are very happy, and that we are lucky that we are alive. You know, so.
Yeah, you bet.
Grateful for that, man.
Yeah, you take care, guys.
Thank you. That was our interview with Anthony Phillips, and thank you very much for your time, Anthony. Have a good night.
Really enjoyed it. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you for this.
Thank you.